I'm sure lots of us have been in a position where we've deployed a virtual machine which has run out of disk space. And when that happens, we'll typically see issues with operating systems or applications as a result. So, to help avoid that issue, I've written some code which dynamically increases managed disk size in Azure based on consumed capacity. And this helps us in a couple of ways. We avoid that scenario where managed disks run out of disk space, and so we avoid the associated challenges with operating systems or applications. We also only provision the capacity that we require in the immediate term, which helps us to reduce the costs associated with deploying larger managed disks within Azure. So in this demo, I've provisioned a virtual machine with a 32 gig managed disk, and we'll now artificially consume space on that disk in order to see the automated resize in action. So let's head across to that virtual machine now. So there are a number of ways to achieve this automated growth, but in this scenario, I've given the virtual machine a managed identity, and then I've assigned that identity a custom role, which allows it to read from and write to its own virtual machine's managed disks. So I've written some looping code on the virtual machine, which will do a number of things. It'll check to see if the disk is low on space based on the thresholds which I've defined. I think in this scenario, I've set the threshold to be 5 gig. So if the disk is within 5 gig of capacity, the script will then go ahead and attempt to increase the disk by 10 gig in capacity. So when that scenario occurs, when that threshold is breached, the virtual machine will make a request to the Azure Instance Metadata Service to request an authentication token. That's the standard and recommended way to retrieve an auth token when using managed identity. It'll then make a call to management.azure.com to request that the managed disk be increased by that predefined increment of 10 gig. The script will then loop and wait for acknowledgement from the management plane to confirm that the disk resize operation is completed, and it'll then go and extend the Windows volume across the additional space that's been provisioned on the disk. And when that operation is completed, the script will just continue its loop. It'll then extend the Windows volume over the additional unused space, and it'll return to a state where it's monitoring for any future instances of low disk space. Okay, so let's see the code in action. So let's kick off the script and start it running. So as we can see, it's monitoring a local volume called logs. And if we look at the logs volume, it's got 20 gig free at the moment, which is great. There's plenty of space for us. The script will loop away in the background until there's any breach. So let's go ahead and start consuming some space on that volume. Okay, so we've consumed a bit more space. So there's only 10 gig free. We can now see that that's been recognized by the script. So let's go ahead and hopefully breach that threshold. Let's create another log file. Not quite enough space for that. Okay, so we've created another file. We can see that the script has recognized that we've breached a threshold, and it'll have gone ahead and made a request to management.azure.com to increase the disk size by 10 gig in size. So it'll then wait for acknowledgement that that's completed. Based on the tests that I've run, it's taken sort of 2-3 minutes for that to complete. So I'll pause the video there, and we'll come back when the operation is completed. Okay, you can see there that the operation in Azure is completed, and then the script has gone ahead and extended the logs volume across the remaining available space. So if we take a look at the volume and refresh the screen, we can see that the volume is now 42 gig in size rather than 32 gig, and we've got 10 gig of space available again now, so that's good. And then if we head back to the Azure portal and we refresh the screen that's showing the managed disk, we can see that the disk's increased to 42 gig in size. So while I'm running this code locally on the virtual machine in this scenario, equally we could centralize that capability to automate this across a fleet of virtual machines in Azure and remotely execute many of the tasks that we've just seen to increase the size of the managed disk in Azure, and then remotely execute a command on the Windows virtual machine to extend the volume across any additional available space that's provisioned. So I'll include a link to the code that we've used in this demo in the video description. But thanks very much. Hope you found that of some use.